Hey guys, Kaz here, and today I'm going to be talking about all the things that I read in May. There was a lot, so this might be a long video, and also I do have a rant at the end, so yes. Anyway, so in May I didn't have like a proper set TBR. I was very much looking forward to just reading what I wanted, but also make that comics, and that is what I did. There are a few like normal books throughout this, but I did very much aim for the comics and read the comics. So let's get into it. Also, I've like grouped them together with comics, so if I read stuff in a different order, I've just pulled them together because it makes more sense. So first of all, I read 3 volumes of The Wicked and the Divine. That would be number 3, which is Commercial Suicide, number 4, which is Rising Action, and number 5, I need to sort that glare out, Imperial Phase Part 1. There we go. I think I've pretty much managed that if I keep an eye on it. Not there, but there. Anyway, so first of all, let me talk about number 3. So I read the 3rd volume and was not impressed. This volume, it doesn't have the proper artist in it. It has a bunch of guest artists, like every issue in this volume is by a different artist. So that's the first thing that I was like, nah, because some of them I wasn't a massive fan of. So let me just, especially this end one, the art was just weird in here. So this was one of them, and it's one of those things like, if this was the artwork that's meant to be in this, then it wouldn't have been so bad, but it's just very different to the normal one. We have like this more painterly one, a bit more like psychedelic-y colours. And then along with the art being different, the stories in here are really all over the place. It didn't really make any sense to what was happening. So volume 1, massive cliffhanger. Volume 2, massive cliffhanger. Volume 3, it like, even characters that are already being killed in this were just randomly in different issues of these. It tells the backstory, it tells stuff that happened a while ago, like from a different person's point of view, which could be interesting, but it just felt very disjointed from the rest of the series, especially like after the pace that was going up. I slightly understand, because obviously there must have been some sort of reason that the artist couldn't work, and instead of just like stopping, something like Saga, they stopped for like 2 years, but that was like 9 volumes in, so it makes sense that people would wait for them. But after 2 volumes of a series, it probably doesn't make sense to like not put any out for a year because the artist is unavailable. So this is the way they went about it. I wasn't a fan of this volume, and I was a little bit like, oh. Then I jumped into number 4 and it was right back to the action. A lot of stuff kicking off. I think it started like right from where number 2 finished, so it was straight back into the thing. So I'm glad that I didn't have to wait. I imagine if I was reading these as they were coming out, or like one a year or whatever, I would have been a little bit more disappointed, but because I could read number 3 and then get straight back into the story number 4, I really enjoyed it. And then number 5, it started off with words, and I'm not a massive fan of words in comics. I'm like, bro, I'm here for pictures and words, not just words. And by words I mean the characters are having interviews, so there's just a lot of words. But once I got past that, I thought it was really enjoyable, like the way that interview section was done. But again, straight back into the story. All of the volumes always have like massive cliffhangers, and number 5 is no different, and number 6 I can't get yet because it's more expensive than the other ones. But I'm waiting, and I'm looking, I'm keeping my eye out constantly, and I've not told you anything about this series, but I feel like I've talked about it loads recently. Every 90 years, some gods appear and everything's kicking off, and people are dying, and there's confusion, and there's stuff going on, and there's stuff in the background, and like you see stuff happening, and then a bit later in a different volume you'll see what actually happened, and there's like a lot of stuff kicking off, and in a really good way. So if you are reading this and you get to number 3 and you're like, oh, carry on, push through it, because it's a little bit of a blip. It's kind of funny as well because it's literally called Commercial Suicide. I wonder if they give that like a little tongue-in-cheek on purpose because they thought, oh, this might be bad for us. But yeah, really enjoy this series, and really hope I can get number 6 soon because it's great. I feel like I've been talking for ages, so let's move on. I've got a lot to talk about. After that, I read The Sad Ghost Club number 3. This is just a really fun, sweet comic. I'll show you. It's just like really simple. It's about these little ghosts, and basically they're all like anxious, they have social anxiety, they're more introverted, they're quiet, they don't have as many friends. And it's just this series of books, and these different ghosts meet other ghosts, and they create this group for Sad Ghost Club, and other people join, and it's just really sweet. And it does talk about like mental health and anxiety and like social stress and stuff like that, and it's just really lovely. So yeah, I don't really have much more to say about that. It's just a really sweet series. Next up, I read volumes 1, 2 and 3 of Kick-Ass the New Girl. So they're just called book 1, 2 and 3, so I don't have to tell you the titles. These ones I borrowed from my library, and it was a point where I was like, I should probably read some of these things. And yeah, these ones were alright. I gave the first 2 3 stars, I think, and I gave the third one like 2.5. The thing with this is, like, they're under the Kick-Ass name, and I'm sure you've heard of Kick-Ass before. Even if you've not read the comics, you've probably seen the film, or you've heard about it just in general life. But like, this story has literally nothing to do with Kick-Ass. It's alright if it was like pass the mantle onto this new person, but this is a fully grown woman who's been in the army, and she comes back and her husband's a deadbeat and ran off with another girl, so she's just stuck with her kids. She needs some extra money, and because she was in the army and she's a real badass, she just gets the moniker of Kick-Ass just for no reason. Somehow she just had the suit, and then she gets in the suit and then just starts going after criminals, and it's just like, I feel like they're just trying to use the name Kick-Ass to get views on this. I don't know whether there was a reason, whether it was purposefully like, oh, let's make a black female Kick-Ass for brownie points. I don't know if that was the thought behind it, but it just doesn't feel... First of all, it doesn't feel like Kick-Ass, because Kick-Ass, even though it's very aggressive, there's a lot of killings, there's a lot of like ruthless stuff happening, it's really tongue-in-cheek and a bit silly, and because like Kick-Ass is a high school kid, there's a lot of like awkward moments, but this is very much just like her being serious, going after criminals, and like none of the Kick-Ass spark, none of the like the feeling is in this, and the stories just weren't that great either. Like each volume she just goes after another bit of the criminal underworld, and then the next volume somebody else is there and then she goes after them, and then it's also one of them where she's very plot armoured. Yeah, she was in the army, but how can she go against like 20 mafia guys and just get out of it, and nobody and like she doesn't get even a scratch on her? Like, sometimes she gets hurt, but when there's them big situations, the fighting scenes were just not very fun. I'll show you the artwork anyway. This is the sort of artwork I have, and obviously they're easy to read, and I had all 3. There is a 4th one, but I just had these 3 stars. Like, I'll carry it on. The first 2, like I said, are 3 stars, but when I read the 3rd one and it was 2.5, I was like, I don't really care about carrying this series on. Right at the end of volume 3, Hit Girl, like the actual Hit Girl, is there, and she's like, oh, who is this person pretending to be my friend? Probably trying to like hook you in to read the 4th one, but I'm just like, I don't care. It's fine, but it's not good, and it's not Kick-Ass, so yeah. After that, I read And Away by Bob Mortimer, and this book was so good. I absolutely loved it. If you don't know who Bob Mortimer is, he's a comedian. He was part of Vic and Bob. He did Shooting Stars in the 90s and 2000s. I don't know if it was the 90s or definitely the 2000s. He's been on like Taskmaster, he's been on Would I Lie to You. Those 2 are very much like made him famous with the newer generation who wouldn't have seen his previous things. But he's just a really, really funny guy, and this is just a story about his life. He's talking about now, like now was a few years ago when this came out, when he found out that he had a heart problem and had to have a surgery, and each like chapter he goes back and talks about different things in his life. And you do see some of the things he talks about on Would I Lie to You, like setting his house on fire and I do beg your pardon, we're in your garden. It's just really good, and the way it's written is just so Bob Mortimer. You read it in his voice. I laughed out loud several times. It was really good. I think I cried as well. It was like, gave me all the emotions, gave me everything I needed and wanted from a Bob Mortimer book, and I just really enjoyed it. So yes, anybody that's like wondering about this, yes is the answer. Read it. If you enjoy Bob, read this book. Also, I love the fact that it shows how introverted he is so humble. Like, he's always talking about Vic being the brains of the operation and doing everything, and him just being like this guy in the background, and he doesn't give himself credit for how amazing he is. So it's just like really sweet to read, and you're just like, Bob, stop, you're so good, you're so funny. But yeah, it was just a really good book, and I'm so glad that I randomly found it in a charity shop for £3 for £1 because I knew I wanted to read it, and now I have. And I'm gonna say it, it's the first book I've given 5 stars this year. So, throwing that out there. I've given out quite a few 4.5 stars, but I feel really picky this year. I feel even pickier than normal. This is the only one still now that I've given 5 stars this year. After that, I read Dead Boy Detectives Volume 1 on my Kindle. It was randomly on Prime reading, so I was like, you know what, I'll give that a read because I watched the TV show and really enjoyed it. The comic was fine. It was fun. It was like them, and there was a couple of different investigations they did. So basically this is about 2 boys that are dead and they're in an investigating team. So weird things happen and they go and investigate what happened. And in this one volume, there's like several different things that they go and investigate. So it's very quick, like here's a thing, we'll go and see what happens, and now the thing is done. I definitely enjoyed the TV show a lot more. The comic was fine. I think I gave it like 3.5 stars. It was fine. I read it. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed the TV show more because it's just fuller and gives them more of a personality. These guys are very much like the backseat people in the Sandman comics, which I haven't read yet. I've read volume 1, but like they were in there, and then sort of like this is a little bit of a spin-off. But yeah, it was alright. I read it. After that, I read The Battle for Jericho by Gene Gant. This one is about this boy called Jericho, and he lives in a very, very religious town, very anti-gay, and there's a guy in the town that everybody knows is gay, and just like berate and they're horrible to because he lives there with his partner. And then Jericho and his friend was like, oh, let's go to the guy's place and trash it. So then they went to the place and trash it. This is not spoilers, this is all on the back. This happens like the first couple of chapters. And his name's Dylan, and he gets hurt accidentally. Like Jericho tries to push away from him and he hits into something, and then he feels really, really bad, so he goes back to the house like the next day, confesses, tells him he should phone the police and everything. But then Dylan's like, I don't want to phone the police, firstly because they're pricks and they won't listen to me because they're also homophobic, but secondly, you've come back here to apologise, you seem really sad, you're crying on my doorstep, also get inside because everyone's going to see this random dude on my doorstep because there's people protesting outside of his house because he's gay and he exists. And then they strike up a bit of a friendship, and it's really weird to begin with. So Jericho says he feels so bad that he will join the gays because like his mind has been twisted that much that being gay is a choice, that you join it, that it's bad. And then like Dylan plays along like, oh yeah, you'll have to sign the contract, you'll have to say that you're gonna become gay and you're gonna go against everybody straight and like purposefully be this evil person. And Jericho's like, yeah, I'll sign that. And it's like a story of Jericho realising that he actually is gay, and he's very much been brought up to believe that it's like obviously extremely bad. And he keeps thinking like, oh no, I have to be gay because I've signed this contract. And obviously later on, Dylan's like, you're an idiot because obviously that's not real, it's not a choice. And he realises that he's having feelings for this other guy. So it's just about being gay as a teenager in an extremely homophobic, extremely religious town. And sort of coming to terms with that, and coming to terms with the fact that it's not a choice, the fact that he just is who he is. And he has this person who is out as like a bit of a mentor, a bit of a reluctant mentor, because he's like, I'm glad that you're thinking this, but also leave me alone because people are horrible and they might think something weird's going on. It isn't one of them stories. He's not about to like get with this older guy. He's just very much sort of like a reluctant mentor because Jericho keeps turning up at his house like, oh, why do I actually have feelings for boys now? Is it because I signed that contract? And he's like, no, don't be a fool. But yeah, I actually surprisingly quite enjoyed this. When I first got to that bit, quite at the beginning, where it was like writing the contract out, I was like, what the fuck is this book? But yeah, I actually quite enjoyed it. It was a very random one. It's obviously a lot to do with religion and sexuality, and I feel like it was a good time. Also, what was quite nice is Gene Gant and the character of Jericho are both black, but race was never a problem in this book, so that was really cool. It was never like anybody treating him any different because he was black, so I appreciated that they weren't like trying to pile on all these different things that are against him. So yeah. During May, the wonderful Kat over at Brews and Reviews and Emily from Novell Novels were doing the Spoonies readathon. So this was all about reading books with characters with disability, either physically that you can see, mentally, hidden disabilities, any sort of disabilities. And I wanted to just like dip my toes in because you could just join in, just read any book with a disabled character. So I read The Amazing Eddie Eckhart, The Big Trip by Rosie Jones. This one is the second book of this Eddie Eckhart series, and Rosie Jones is known for being a comedian. She has cerebral palsy, and so does her main character, Eddie. And yeah, I enjoyed this one. This one very much gives the vibes of Jacqueline Wilson, as did the first one. It's like that sort of middle grade book. You have your little pictures and stuff drawn in, like, oh, they're going on a trip, so here's a picture, that sort of business. It's like, if you enjoyed that sort of Jacqueline Wilson as a kid, then maybe the nostalgia of that will be here. But yeah, on this one, they're going on a trip, and it's a trip with the their little, I'll say theatre club because I can't think of the word. Drama. I don't know why words are so hard. With the school drama class are going on a trip with this other school, and then there's like stuff going on there. It definitely deals with ableism in here. She has cerebral palsy, and the teacher from the other school is very dismissive. She's very like, says some nasty things to Eddie Eckhart, saying that she can't do the drama-y stuff because of her disability. So it deals with that. It also deals with sexuality. So Rosie Jones is a lesbian, and Eddie Eckhart is like all up in her feelings about the girl that we meet in the first book. And yeah, it's just a really nice, fun, great middle grade time. Obviously dealing with some heavier topics, but also in like a fun, whimsical way. So maybe we're about halfway through-ish, kind of. I don't know. I'm talking about a lot of stuff, but some of them are together. So here's some cat content, and then I'll be back with more words. So after that I read Boy Everywhere by A.M. Dasu. This was for the buzzword readathon thing. The word was every, I believe. So I read Boy Everywhere because I read a short story for the World Book Day by this author about this character last year. So I was like, yeah, I'll read the actual book. And yeah, I really enjoyed this book. This is about, I can't remember anybody's name, I'm sorry. I don't have it in front of me, so I can't even look at it. Right, I just looked it up because otherwise it would annoy me. Right, this is about Sammy, who lives just a normal, quite wealthy life probably in Damascus in Syria. And he's just living his life. He's got a nice big house, and he's got all of his friends and his game consoles and his iPads, and you know, just living life. And then a bomb goes off in a shopping mall in Damascus where he lives, and because of this his parents decide to move to England. His mum and his sister were in the shopping mall when it happened, so it was like very much there. His sister has stopped talking, so she's become selective mute because of PTSD, and the family are worried. So they want to get to England, but they have to do it via an illegal route. And this book just goes through the story of them trying to get there, so all the different ways they have to go through, give money to get on a boat, this sort of thing. And like when they get into England, how they're treated, how different people see them because they're getting asylum. And it just, there's a bit where they're in a detention centre, there's different families treating them terribly, but also there's obviously light in there as well. But it is very much a heavy book about this family, and it's a middle grade trying to get to safety. And I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. I think it's a wonderful book to humanise people because obviously racism is very rampant, and for some reason in 2024 it's getting worse, like against anyone that's not white or is an immigrant or is any sort of anybody. And this book really humanises Sammy and his family. It shows that yeah, they're just like you and I, you know, to like the wider white population of England. they were just living their best life. They weren't from this like horrible place, they were just existing, and then because war got close to them, it can happen to anybody, that means that they have to get away to a safe place. And I really enjoyed the book. It probably made me cry. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was like there was a lot of stuff going on. And yeah, if you haven't read it already, then I highly recommend giving it a read because it is really good. So yeah. Next up, I read the whole 6-volume run of Gideon Falls. This is by Jeff Lemire, Andrea Sorrentino and Dave Stewart. And this one I very much picked up on a whim from the library because Jeff Lemire, and I really enjoy Jeff Lemire. He's the creator of Sweet Tooth. And yeah, I picked this series up and I'm so glad I did because I enjoyed it so much. It was creepy, it was twisted, it was weird. There was like different flipping times and different places and like this creepy thing. So basically, where do we start? We start on number 1. There's this new priest. There's a new guy for the church going into this small town of Gideon Falls, and when he's there he sees a barn, this creepy barn, and somebody's been murdered outside of it. And then this untangles this whole weird thing that like for hundreds of years this barn keeps showing up. There's this weird creepy dude with a big smile on his face. There's murders happening. There's like everything's kicking off, and yeah, it's horror, it's supernatural, it's definitely adult and mature. It's weird. It was just really good, like genuinely out loud. On several different volumes, several different times, I said, oh shit, as I was reading it, because like, it was really good. Stuff was happening, and it was just like, what? But in the best possible way. And this is a sort of artwork we have in here. So it's very much stylized in a certain way. But yeah, it was just so good. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't even read the back of them. I just saw Jeff Lemire. I saw at the bottom it said, horror, occult and supernatural, and I picked it up and it's just really, really good. I'm so glad that I did. I absolutely devoured this series. I'm glad all 6 of them, like that was the run as well, because I could just read the whole thing. So if you're into horror, if you're into supernatural, if you're into like weird creepy things happening, if you're into different dimensions and time, if you're into like mysteries and stuff kicking off, then this series may well be for you. After that, I read This Is Kind of an Epic Love Story by Case and Calendar, and this one accidentally also like goes with the Spoonies readathon, because what I didn't know going into this is the old friend slash love interest is deaf in here, so that's kind of cool that I just accidentally read another book for that readathon. But yeah, in here we are following Nate, and he's just existed. And then his old best friend, Oliver James, because they always say his name together, Oliver James, turns up. He hasn't seen him for 5 years. Things ended in a weird way. They used to be like this, and then like something happened, and then they're not like this. He turns back up at the school, and it's just about them pining after each other. It's very dramatic. It's very, like, I'm not going to talk about it, but then other people talk about it. There's a friend group happening. It's very much like the dramas that you would expect from like teenagers, and it's messy, but I enjoyed it. It's very much one of those ones where I was like, we're friends and now we're not, and oh, I have feelings for you but I shouldn't have feelings for you, so now I'm just going to not talk to you, but I'm not going to tell you I'm not going to talk to you. It's like very that. But yeah, it was good. It was not like the best thing ever. I think I gave it 3.5 stars, but I enjoyed it. Oh, I found my bookmark. It's in this book. If you watched my haul, you would have seen in my sci-fi bit that there was a bookmark that I couldn't find. It's here. A big dude on top of a tall thing. There we go. So with that book, I had it with me when I was out and about doing something, and for the train journey home, I needed something else to read. So I just had a little look on my Kindle app on my phone, and I found Adora and the Distance. This was like a little comic thing, a middle grade comic, I think, YA, something like that. And I was like, fine, cool, let's just read that, because it's something that I'm not going to just get into a big book, but it will take me the time of my train journey. And unfortunately, this was not the one. So first of all, just in general, the story was very wishy-washy. It didn't flow. So in this, there's a girl and she's from this place and she needs to go on some sort of journey. She needs to go to somewhere else for a reason. And there's these different characters to help her along the way. But like the journey, one panel, they'll be like at the top of a mountain. And then the next panel, there's a boat next to an ocean and they're getting on the paying the dude for a boat. And I'm like, where did this boat guy come from? What is going on? So the story was very disjointed. There were certain times where it just wasn't written very well as well. For example, like, I am going to spoil stuff, whatevs. She finds out that one of the people on the trip, like her servant or something, because she exists, betrayed her and she's the reason for some stuff. And like literally the girl says, oh, this is my fault, I was the one that told these dudes. These dudes, bearing in mind, are dudes that have killed like 3 or 4 people, like the companions that are on this group quest with her. Like 4 people have got murdered and she's the reason. And like literally her reply was, oh, it's okay, I forgive you. I'm like, what the fuck are you on about? She's just murdered like loads of people and then admitted it. There's not even a little bit like, oh, I'm really upset that you did this. The girl's like 9 or something, she's quite young, but she's just instantly like, it's alright. And then it carries on, the story's disjointed, the characters all blend into one. I don't know anybody's name. Not that that says anything because I'm terrible with names, but I mean like, normally when I'm reading something, while I'm reading it I remember the name, it's after that I forget. But like as I was reading this, I didn't know who anyone was, nobody had a personality, people were just dying left, right and centre, I didn't care about any of them. And then turns out, like at the end, the twist, this is why I'm spoiling it for you because nobody wants to read this, the twist is that this girl is actually a girl who is autistic and she's at this centre and like all of this is happening in her head and her family are like, oh, I bet she's in this like wonderful magical world. And it's written in a really horrible way, like, oh, it's really hard for us to see her like this, it's really hard for us that she doesn't talk and that she's autistic. Like, and this is written by, it's one of those where it's like written by the dad of an autistic girl and he thinks he's doing this in a nice way as like, oh, I'm writing this for her, but it's very much feels like he's writing it as like, oh, having this autistic child is such a burden on us and we're trying to get all this therapy to make her normal. It was very that. So I already didn't like the way that the story's written, I didn't like the way that the like journey was there, I didn't like the characters, but then that bit was the icing on the cake. It was just like not good. So yeah, an accidental read of someone with a disability, but definitely not one that I can recommend. So yeah. The next thing I read was The Worst Ronin by Maggie Tokuda Hall and Faith Schaffer. This was an ARC that I got. So the first, I'll show you what the artwork looks like in the finished copy. So it's like this, it's really fun, but it's like, it's told now, but it's also told a few years ago, and like this is style then, so you can tell what is the present and what is the past, so it's like a lot more colourful in the present. But I read most of it like this because it's an ARC, so it's in black and white. But yeah, this one is about the worst Ronin. So it's this girl who managed to get into this academy, is it? And then train and be this warrior, and like she's the only girl that's ever been let in it rather. And she's the older character. It's her like past that shows up in the backstory bits. But now she's very much like going round, people don't respect her, she's just getting drunk and causing fights in pubs and stuff. And then there's this other girl whose family finds out that there's a village that's under attack by this evil thing. So she wants to get the worst Ronin as a companion and go and do a quest, and she also wants to become a fighter, and she looks up to her even though everybody else doesn't look up to her. And it's very much that. So it was really sweet. There was definitely some serious aspects that I won't talk about because it's spoilery. So there were some serious aspects, but also it was very goofy and whimsical. But what I found really fun, that I feel like people are either going to enjoy this or not enjoy this, it's very much looks like it's set in the past. They're going around on horses, there are no cars, there are no like buildings that look new, they're all in wooden houses, but they have phones and the internet. I think it's quite a fun little mixture. So there's certain points where they're going on this journey, but also like she's got a phone out and she's like, oh, I've not got any internet reception, I need to do stuff. And I just really liked the juxtaposition of those two things. I found it really fun that to put that technology in this sort of surroundings. But I feel like some people would probably be like, oh, why have they got phones on this? It doesn't fit. But then other people like me will be like, that's a fun little difference and I enjoy it. So yeah, this was really fun. Also, there is an animal that's really cute. So the worst Ronin, I'm not telling you anyone's name because you know what I'm like. So the worst Ronin is Tatsuo, who is the older woman, and then Chihiro is the younger girl. But Tatsuo has a horse, and you know, like in Disney and stuff, when you have the animal companion who always has like the and does stuff. It's like that. It's just really fun. I really enjoy an animal companion that has a personality. So yeah, I really liked her horse. It was really cool, and it would be like and always be on the other girl's side, and like it was just fun. It gave that little extra whimsy here as well. So yeah, a good time. Next up, I read Right Where I Left You by Julian Winters. So this one is about these two friends who have been like the best of friends forever, and they're a bit geeky. One of them is like mega into comics, the other one is mega into gaming, and together they want to go to this con. What I didn't know, because I didn't read the synopsis, but it does say it in there, so it's not spoilers, is they don't actually go to a con. Like this whole time I started this book and I thought they was going to go to a Comic-Con, but the story is that they miss out on the tickets because our main character Isaac starts talking to this boy that he had a crush on in high school. It's just after high school, it's like before they're going off to college, and he misses out on tickets. So there's very much that underlining feeling of, why hasn't my best friend Diego gone off at me yet, because we missed tickets, we've signed up for this thing, we've saved hundreds of dollars, we've missed out on the tickets. So it's very much these two friends who are like so close and do everything together, but also don't talk about the serious stuff. So there's this underlining things here. It's about sexuality, it's about them going to their first pride, it's about friend groups as well. So there's this friend group of like the gaming nerds, and Isaac's very much an introvert, he's very much not very good at making friends, and he's kind of thrust into this situation that now it's not just him and Diego, it's him and a friend group. So now he has multiple people that he has to like interact with. So it's very much that, but it's also like this realizing of feelings. And yeah, I enjoyed it. Julian Winters, I've said this a few times, with his books a lot of the time it takes me about half the book to like get invested in anything. I don't know why, I think it's his writing style, but all the books of his I've read and I'm like and this book was very much like, it's the only one, it's the last one I owned that I hadn't read yet, and I was like, if this book gives me the same feeling that I feel like I'm probably done with him, I've read maybe 3 of his books now, this one is definitely the one that I enjoyed the most. So maybe it's a push to try his other things, I don't know. But yeah, I did enjoy this book. It's very much like about feelings and feeling them a lot. There's also a lot of family dynamics in here. So Isaac, our main character's dad, left, and he has a lot of ill feelings about that, and ill feelings towards his brother because he felt like his brother took his dad's side. So there's a lot of that sort of family dynamics. There's also with Diego, he doesn't want to go to college because he wants to do gaming and like get into that, and his parents are very loving and very like there, but also they don't understand that, like, why are you not going to college? So there's a lot of family dynamics in here as well, friendship dynamics, group dynamics. There's all the dynamics, and I enjoyed it. And then last but not least, and I did at the beginning of this video, if you're still here, which you're probably not, talk about a book that I need to rant about, and we're here, the last book of the month, and it's very shiny. So this is The Merciless Ones by Namina Fauna. This is book 2 in the Deathless series, I want to say. The first book is The Gilded Ones. So I really enjoyed The Gilded Ones. I thought it was a really good book, it was a really intriguing premise, and then this one happened. And I'll give you like a little bit of a non-spoilery lowdown, but then afterwards I'm just going to go into all the spoilers. So with this book, it's just like, I felt like all of the character dynamics were different. The main character changed so much. It was like 6 months after the ending of book 1, and like I didn't care about anyone now. All of the characters blended together, the story was messy, there was just like, and also this took me so long. It put me into a massive slump as well. Like literally, I'm filming this the day that I'm putting it out, so we're more than a third into the month, and I've read one thing, I've finished one thing, and it was a comic. I was just slumpy McSlumpson after this. I was reading it as a buddy read, which is why I pushed through, but I very much have DN after this series. I was just like, I don't care what happens in the last book, to be honest. So yeah, if you don't want any spoilers, then thanks for being here, but now I'm going to go into the spoiler territory, so if you carry on, it's your own fault. So the first book, The Gilded Ones, is about our main character. What is her name? Because she goes by a weird thing. She goes by the Nuru, but what's it? Decca. I don't need to look, I remember. Decca. So it's about Decca living in this village, and it's very religious, and once girls hit 16, they're tested, and if their blood turns gold, then they're rounded up and killed. But the only problem is that this gold thing is like, means that they're one of these magical girls that have loads of power, and they can only be killed by one thing. So like in that first book, Decca, like you're so in with her. She's just this normal girl, very meek, very like subservient, because that's what girls have to be in this place. And then she's got gold blood, and then she's like taken to a basement and killed over and over again because they have to try and find her true death. It's like, it's harrowing, there's a lot of feelings there, there's PTSD, you like very much feel for her and care about her. And then this character White Hands turns up, and there's like this group, like this place where they can take some of these girls and train them up, and then they can be like soldiers for the world, because they're so hardcore and can only die one way. Because there are these things called death shrieks, like these monsters that come and like attack villages. So they're like, we'll save some of the girls so they can be warriors. So that's very much the first book. Like, first of all, that first half, the second half is very much like training, trying to get better at fighting, and figuring out she has all these different powers. And then right at the end of the first book, she unleashes the gods, like these goddesses, the Gilded Ones, her mothers, and finds out that she's like this magical being that they created, who's like the most powerful thing ever, and she can talk to the death shrieks, and she can command everybody with her voice, and she can like do everything and all the things. And then book 2 happens, and like, first of all of her characterization was gone. She didn't interact with any of her friends as much as she did in the first book. I didn't care about the romance thing happening. That was terrible. Was not even sure why it was there, because it was pointless. The way the plot armor on this woman is just insane. Like, I don't care about this book, and I don't care about these things that these characters are going through, because like every time anything happens, all of a sudden she's like, oh, and she also has this power, and she also has this power. Like, she's the most powerful thing you've ever seen in your life, and it's just so pointless. She, like I said a minute ago, if she can talk to the death shriek. Oh, turns out death shrieks are not actually bad, they're just these girls, after they die they come back as death shrieks. So she can talk to them and command them as an army. She's going against all these men, like the evil religion men, and she can command anyone to do anything with her voice. And then they get a symbol against that, so now all of a sudden she's like, oh, she can't even die, she doesn't even have one death now she's immortal, so she can do that. Every fight scene there'll be like 50 guys, and she's like dead. So like there's no worry in your mind, and you don't care about anything, because every time something potentially would happen. At one point she was in a place where they were surrounded by warriors, and then like her pet all of a sudden like flipping evolved into Charizard and can get every single member of her party on its back and fly away. Like, every time anything slightly happened, it was just like, oh, and now she can do this. Oh, and now her pet is a massive dragon. Oh, and now they can do this. Oh, and now her best friend can command the ground. Oh, and now, oh, so then people did die eventually. Her love interest, Kater, who is a male normal human, and then he wakes up and all of a sudden he can control fire and can kill everybody with fire. I'm like, why is every single character in here the most powerful being ever? Like, it makes me not care about anything, because nothing can happen to any of these characters. It was such a drag. The story was stupid. Like, at first I didn't like it because the goddesses said that there was this thing, I can't remember what it was called, but there was this thing that they created, like this arcane object, and if the ruler of this world wasn't from this specific bloodline, then this arcane object will steal all of their powers and then they'll die. I'm like, first of all, why would any goddess purposefully make something? That's stupid. They could steal your powers just because someone's not on a throne. Because bloodlines die. People get ousted. It's such a stupid concept. But then it turns out that that's not a real thing. Like, the goddesses are evil. There's this other god, a male god. Oh no, as if the males also have gods. And it's just the most stupid shit ever. And yeah, I just don't care about any of the characters. I don't remember who any of her friends are. Like, all of the friendship dynamics are dead. There's like one girl that you remember who she is because she talks. Like, the way her writing is written is like, when she speaks, it's written phonetically how she talks. That's the only way you can tell. Everybody else blends into one. All of a sudden, like, half of the characters are LGBT as well. Like, there was no... This is not something that happened in the first book. It's like, she just thought, oh, let's just make everyone queer as well, for no reason. Just to, like, brownie points? I don't know. Specifically for ones, like, in the training ground, like, these goddesses, they're all about the female empowerment to the point, like, they hate men. And in the training grounds, there are two characters, I believe, that we find out are trans women. And, like, and then Decca's like, oh yeah, I realised that you were trans when I went into the combat state and, like, saw your body. But, like, that, there was never even an inkling in the first book that I remember of her thinking, like, oh, the body is slightly different to what I was expecting, so this must be a trans woman. Like, but then obviously the goddesses hate them, but also they accept them a little bit, but also they hate them because, like, the bodies. It's just, why are you just randomly making characters trans in a way that you're trying to say, like, oh look, I have representation, but it's like, it's just done so badly. Talking about combat state, yeah, there's a combat state as well, where, like, she goes into this state and she can just see everybody and she can see all the different points that she needs to hurt somebody. And at one point she was slipping through different, like, dimensions. There was a fight scene that lasted about a paragraph where she was, like, here, and then she went into a door and she was here, and then she was here, and she just, like, killed 20 people without even looking at them. It was just so stupid. She's so OP'd. I don't care about what happens in the third book because this story's stupid, and it's unfortunate because I really enjoyed the first book. But, like, everything about her character, boring now. Everyone's OP'd. I don't care. I know it feels like I care because of how much I've just talked about it. I cared about the fact that I read this and it was bad. But I don't care about what happens to any of these characters. She's also, like, fighting gods, and all of a sudden she's so powerful she can go and get all of them as well. It's just stupid. It is just bad. There we go. That was the last thing I read in May. And if you got this far, well done, because I feel like I've been talking for so long. Let me know down below if you've read any of these things, what you read in May. Do any sound good? I don't know. Do the things if you want, like if you want, subscribe if you want, comment if you want, but only if you want. And yeah, I will be back with another video at some point soon, so bye.